Hi, it's me, and it's you. Do you remember me? It's been a long time. It's been over 2 weeks. Yeah, I was traveling safely. I went to a place where I could relax and be away from other people just for a little bit with my family. And it was really nice. But while I was there, I did not have good internet service well enough to do a video for you. And I wanted to read today's story on that day and couldn't. But we're here now. I'm so glad you waited for me. Hey, right now it's not Friday, it's Wednesday. It's the middle of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's right in the middle. And this is going to be our new time to meet each week. Yeah, it's very exciting. That means I don't have to wait all week long to see you and to read with you. And hopefully you feel the same about me. Well, there's Cookie. You see what she's doing? She's panting. You know why? And now she's yawning. She's a little hot. Where I live in New York, it's really humid today. As you can see, I look a little sweaty. It's because it's hot. Maybe it's hot where you live, unless you're down in Australia and it's fall there. But wherever you are, welcome. I'm really glad that you're here today. Like I said, this is a story that I wanted to read to you for a little while. This is a story about something that actually happened, really happened, 51 years ago here in New York City. 51 years ago feels like a long time, I know, but it really wasn't too long ago, and it might really be when your grandparents were alive. It might be from that time, likely. And so this is something that's not too far away, and this one event has changed the way that history has gone and the equality for so many people. What's equality? Well, equality has the word equal in it. You could say it's equality, but that's not how we say it. We say equality. And this story is called Stonewall, a building, because Stonewall was a building, an uprising, and a revolution. And if you don't know what those words mean, I will explain them to you. But first, I would like to get ready. So I'm going to take my arms out to the side. And you can do this too, because sometimes before we pay attention, I have to move my body so I'm ready to sit and listen. So if you want to do it too, or if you've gone so far in your day and you're feeling a little tight or stressed, take your shoulders like I am and put them up toward your ears. See left and right and left, and go. That feels good. I'm going to do it 2 more times. Ready? In. Yeah. One more. In. I like that. And I'm going to take my hands to my shoulders and I'm just going to go side to side a little bit. And what does this do? Just stretches my back. Yeah. Now I feel pretty good. I hope you do too. Well, as I promised, this is the story called Stonewall. Raise your hand if you've heard of Stonewall before. Oh, I guess I can't see your hand, but if you're raising it, that's great. Stonewall, just going to take off the dust jacket, makes it a little easier for me to hold. Stonewall was a building, and this happened, like I said, in New York City in Manhattan. And I think we should just jump right in. Are you ready? You see the cover? See people raising their fists. All different types of people. Yeah. Whoa. Here we go. Look at this. This is interesting. This doesn't look like it was only 50 years ago. This looks like it's 150 years ago, or maybe more. It says, 2 stable houses side by side. For more than 100 years, we witnessed history. And then came a night when we became part of history. See those two stable houses? That's interesting. The book is written from a perspective as if the building is talking. So inside our brick walls, horses whinnied and hammers clanged. And outside, passerbys bustled as carriages rumbled on the cobblestone streets. Cobblestone, you see the stones on the bottom? Yeah, the streets back in the 1840s, and even some streets today, still in the same area, have bricks. They're called cobblestones instead of the pavement that we have now. As time passed, the wealthy residents began to move uptown. They moved a little more north in Manhattan, and they took with them their art clubs, libraries, fine hotels, and theaters. Our neighborhood became a mecca for immigrants arriving from all around the world. And so an immigrant is just a person. It's a word for a person who comes from another part of the world and moves to another country outside the one they were born. And so that's what the US, we have a lot of people who were born in another country and came here. That might even be you or your family too. So that's what happened in this neighborhood. Visitors made their way to Greenwich Village, and many of them stayed. That's nice. Greenwich Village was changing. We changed too. The smell of our freshly baked bread began to waft out our windows and into the neighborhood. The roar of automobiles replaced the rumble of carriages as artists and writers moved in. Contemporary art galleries, experimental theaters, and small restaurants sprang up all around us. The village was booming, and it was the creative center of New York City. By 1930, our two buildings were joined together, and we became, what's it called? Bonnie's Stonewall Restaurant. I have an aunt named Bonnie. That's cool. Bonnie's Stonewall Restaurant. Celebrities, artisans, tourists, and local residents lunched at our tables, shoulder to shoulder. That's nice. See the sign looks like, whoa, sorry about that. Look at the sign. It's the same sign here as it is in the front. I would have liked to go there and have a meal. Greenwich Village was a place where you could be yourself and where being different was welcomed and accepted. And I think that's kind of important because I don't know about you, but sometimes I felt, especially as a child and even as an adult, I felt different from other people. Have you ever felt that before, where you didn't quite fit in with everybody else? And maybe you felt that there were some people you've met who didn't like you so much because of who you are. In Greenwich Village, which is just the neighborhood in New York, they could go and be themselves and be accepted altogether. And I like that. That's a nice community feeling. I want to be where I feel safe and accepted for who I am. And I bet you do too. So newness, that's a fun word. Newness thumped in the heart of Greenwich Village in the 1950s, vibrating our windows, and musicians played on the streets, and jazz filled the air. Poets performed in restaurants. Someone's reading a poem there. You could do that one day. Artists painted in their studios. That's a huge canvas, look at that. And the beat movement arrived, and we witnessed it. The beat movement. That's something interesting that you could look up after the story. Leading up to the 1960s, our neighborhood welcomed gays and lesbians, which are men who love men and women who loved women. We were a home for people who were told that they didn't fit in or belong anywhere else. Remember what I said about being accepted for who you are? It was hard at this time in the 1960s for men who fell in love with men and women who fell in love with women to be allowed and accepted anywhere else but the village, at least in New York City, so in most places around the world. So that's why a lot of people felt safe in Greenwich Village and safe near Stonewall. We had welcomed all kinds of people before, so we knew what to do. In 1967, we swung open our doors and became the Stonewall Inn. Gay men and women from throughout the city and the country began to meet old and new friends, and they were free to be themselves inside our walls. Stonewall just accepted everybody. Women and men, young and old, teenagers, transgender people, drag queens, veterans, business people, students, people of different colors and races, religions, and cultures all gathered, chatted, laughed, and I like this one, danced under our roof. Sounds like a kind of place I would like to be, being together with everybody. Others were not as accepting. They thought those who gathered within our walls were just too different. We heard the whispering voices of those inside. Loving someone like yourself was illegal, like it was actually against the law. Socializing together could get you arrested, meaning if you were a woman hanging out and socializing with another woman, because it was illegal for you to be in a relationship and love someone who was the same gender as you, it was illegal and it could get you arrested. Socializing together could get you arrested, and wearing the wrong clothes could land you in jail. Wow. Being gay could get you fired or kicked out of your home. That's not the case anymore. But back in the time, that was the case. You could lose your job, or you could get kicked out of your home just because of who you love, if that person happened to be the same gender as you. It's a very different time. Some nights, we heard fists pounding on our doors, felt angry footsteps stomping across our floor, and saw flashes of glaring lights as the police arrested some of those inside. After each raid, those who hadn't been arrested left very quietly, angrily disappearing into the darkness. But we, the Stonewall, we stood tall and kept opening our doors, and people kept coming. So I see what's happening here is that the police are doing a lot of raids, which a raid is when the police show up and break apart the party and start arresting people for doing things that are illegal, such as socializing, wearing the wrong type of clothes that they're not allowed to wear, and possibly being in love, suspected of being in love with somebody who is the same gender. And that kept happening a lot. See, the police raids kept coming. We couldn't stop them. In the steaming early morning hours of June 28th, 1969, nearly a full moon, another raid began. And there's a sign that says, "This is a raided premises, Police Department, City of New York." So June 28th, like I said, I wanted to read this to you 2 weeks ago on the 26th. But this was just the anniversary, the 51st anniversary of this part of the story just happened. A voice shouted, "Police! We're taking the place!" Officers stormed through the doors, lining up the people inside, demanding IDs, identification documents, and detaining some and arresting others. So this is happening a lot in a place where people are accepted and free to be themselves, even though it's technically illegal by the law. So the cops are just enforcing the law in their view, but it's really bothering and hurting these people. But this time, those not arrested didn't disappear into the night. No, instead they stood defiantly in the street and on the sidewalk under our rusty sign. This time they were not quiet. As the ones arrested were led into police cars and patrol wagons, the anger of the growing crowd was lit. "Why don't you do something?" yelled one woman as she was forced into a police car. That's interesting. She was watching everybody watch her and said, why doesn't somebody do something? This isn't right. We should be free. So immediately, the spark of anger grew into a smoldering resistance. There's that word, resistance. Shouts, screams echoed off bricks, fists thrust up into the air, and we saw the faces of the crowd. We felt their rage. The Stonewall uprising had begun. The police, shocked by the defiance of the crowd, rushed back in and they barricaded themselves inside to protect themselves from this crowd. The crowd is getting angry, but I also understand why the crowd is angry, because it's not right to punish people for being who they are. Our friends stood outside trying to force our doors open. You see? It's kind of a dark book, so I'll try to hold it where you can see. Our windows were shattered. Smoke drifted through our rooms, but we stood firm. The police called for help and it soon arrived. The fires were extinguished. They were put out. The police came back outside. But the crowd's anger was not extinguished. Gay power, the protesters shouted. We want freedom. They want to be free. The police had never seen anything like it before, and neither had we. Remember, the we is the building talking. Neither had we. And it wasn't over. The Stonewall uprising continued on and off for several days and nights. A new day was dawning for the gay rights movement. The change had begun here, inside our Stonewall walls at the Stonewall Inn. And now it's known as the LGBTQ plus rights movement, not just the gay movement. That's what we call it now. On June 28th, 1970, so a couple years later, our windows looked out on men and women gathering to celebrate the first anniversary of the Stonewall uprising. Look at that. At first, hundreds of people marched, then thousands of women and men, young and old, teenagers, transgender people, drag queens, veterans, which are people who served in the military, business people, students, people of different colors and races, religions and cultures, and their friends and families joined through to parade in the streets of New York City. Say it clear, say it loud. Gay is good, gay is proud, they chanted. So they're celebrating the time that they rose up and said, we are people and we have rights. And we are a lot of people. And then they had friends come and support them. And this in particular is reminding me a lot of what I see on TV and in the streets here in my city and in cities around the world, is people coming together, holding signs and calling for freedom. Yeah. Many things are different now. We're in 2020 right now, 2020. Some things have changed, and even some laws have changed. Now, two men who love each other or two women who love each other, and just two people can marry. We know because we've seen their happy faces snapping photos outside our door. We've heard their footsteps walking side by side along our floors, and we've felt their love. And each year in June, people all over the world create the movement for LGBTQ plus rights, a movement that has come so far and a movement that still has further to go. They celebrate inside and outside our walls, and they celebrate freedom, and here's that word we talked about in the beginning, equality, being equal to everybody, having the same opportunities, rights, and laws applied evenly. It all began one night here at the Stonewall Inn when two old horse stables became part of history. See the photo here? And even now you can go into the West, you can go into Greenwich Village and you can see Stonewall. It's a real place. And in a lot of places in the village, you can also see the rainbow flag, which is the official flag for the LGBTQ community. It's pretty cool. And here's the real picture of it. Yeah. Someday, when everything starts to calm down and return back to normal in our world, where we don't have to worry so much about moving around, you could come to New York and you could visit Stonewall. You could see outside and take your picture too. And you could stay outside and know that whoever you grow up loving, if you do that when you're older, you can love who you want to love, because love is love. And a large part of it is in thanks to the people who started the riot and the raid and fought against the raid, It's a lot of that we have to thank for these people for speaking out and not being afraid, because they realized that the laws were not just, they weren't fair. And like I said, I see a lot of people now. It might be a little scary, it might be a little bit alarming to see people angry or yelling in the streets about something that they believe in. But I think that if we listen and we look at the ways that our laws now and maybe in the past have been unjust or unequal, we call that inequality. If we look at those things and then we look at the effects of having those laws that were just, things were not equal in the very recent past, and even now, I think that if we listen to people protesting and starting a movement and an uprising, it might help our world become a better place. I believe that because I know from learning from what's happened in the past that now, because they took action and they said enough is enough, because they did that 50 years ago, 51 years ago, we can love who we want to love. And that's a beautiful thing. We don't have to worry about losing our job for who we love. We don't have to worry about losing our home because of who we love. It's wonderful. And so even though you might be not as old as these people were, or as old as I am, you might not think of yourself as an adult yet. You might not be, probably not. But there's still something you can do. Right? You can write letters. You can make signs if you want to make signs. And you can talk to your friends about the things that you think and you believe too, because everybody knows in their heart that we all should have a fair chance. Everything should be equal for all of us. I think you know it more than me and some of the people who are my age. Well, I hope you like that book. Excuse me. Just slid right off my chair and took me out. Stonewall, a building, an uprising, and a revolution. Revolution is to change something. And that was written by Rob Sanders and illustrated by Jamie Kristoff. So I hope you enjoyed that today. It was really good to see you. And before we say goodbye, I would like to give you a hug. Well, I guess I can't really, but I'm going to do this. And when I close my eyes and count to 3, maybe you can do that too. And it will feel like I'm giving you a hug. You ready? Stretch your arms out, cross them, and then touch your shoulders. And when I say 3, give a big squeeze. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thanks for coming today. And I will see you next week, now on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock in New York, 10 a.m. in the morning in California. And I think it is 5 a.m. in Melbourne, Australia. You can always watch again some other time. And there's always these videos, we leave them on for you to replay. So if you want to share them with your friends, go right ahead. We'll see you next time. Have a good day. Take care.